When you first start Avowed, you're going to have a lot of information coming at you all at once. And while the game does offer hints and helpful tips, there are so many little things that you can miss. While not everything I've laid out in this video is absolutely vital to make it through the story, a majority of these are things I wish I had discovered earlier in my first run through that would have been super helpful, made the game much easier, and in certain cases, would have made the game even more enjoyable. So with that said, let's get into these early game tips that you should be doing immediately as soon as you get to the region of Dawnshore in Avowed. Alright, so right from the jump, you're going to meet the first of your companions. Kai is a strong fighter, and as you'll notice, will constantly put himself in harm's way. But don't look at that as a bad thing, because that is what he's most useful for. He's a great companion to use as a distraction so you can take out a majority of the enemies that are focusing on him. So while Kai is certainly a great guy, he's not exactly what I'm focusing on here. The real point and the helpful tip that I'm getting at is that you should learn how to use your companion abilities to your advantage early in the game. Almost every time that I'm about to engage in some sort of combat, I start things off by using one of my companion's abilities. Not only are they good for distractions, but as you get later in the game, you can enhance their abilities, allowing them to attack multiple enemies at once. And trust me, this is really helpful when you're dealing with a lot of enemies that are all targeting you. So the important thing to take away from this is that as soon as you're able to, bring up your ability wheel and start testing out different ways to make use of your companions. Not to mention that each companion has a non-combat ability, which you'll find useful for getting past certain obstacles, searching for loot, activating essence generators, and dispelling illusions. Although a majority of these you won't have to worry about for some time. The next tip, which is really simple, but as you'll notice becomes more important throughout the game, is make sure you're constantly purchasing lockpicks at every merchant that you go to. Lockpicks are something that will keep coming up throughout the entire game, and while you can get them from chests, backpacks, as well as off of enemies' bodies, you'll find that almost every merchant carries these, and it often works out where the amount of lockpicks that you can get at a certain merchant is the exact amount that you'll need to open up a chest that happens to be nearby. And since they don't cost you a lot of money, I highly recommend picking them up at every single instance that you can. And speaking of purchasing things, I also recommend that you buy consumables at certain merchants, and specifically the ones that provide you with temporary abilities. You can buy these at almost any merchant or bartender. And that will go along with my next tip, and that is to not be conservative with those consumables that provide you with abilities. So as you'll come to see, there are certain drinks and food items that will provide you with a specific bonus that makes your character stronger, faster, and overall better in a ton of ways, but they're only temporary. However, you'll come across so many throughout your time playing that it's downright wasteful to not use them pretty much any time you're about to see combat with a bunch of enemies. And because the bonuses that these give are actually really useful, you shouldn't only be using them for boss fights or on quests. Like I said, you'll collect so many of these over time that you'll eventually wish you had used them in almost every fight that you were in. So make sure to take advantage of these, and even if you're not about to engage in any combat, you can still use some of them to move around the map a lot faster or protect you from certain accumulations. Next thing on the list is to make sure you get unique weapons, armor, clothing, and accessories as early as you possibly can. Not only are unique items the best items you can get in the game, but getting them early on means you can upgrade them sooner and try out all their different unique bonuses and abilities to find what best fits your playstyle and what will ultimately help you move on in the game a lot faster. Now this next tip I'm sure is pretty obvious to everybody, but if you're someone that usually sticks to the main storyline and only occasionally goes off the beaten path searching in other areas of the map, but because some of the best gear that you can get, such as unique items, as well as the materials that you need to upgrade weapons and armor, are not always going to be found during quests, I do recommend searching for and opening all chests, backpacks, and any type of lootable items that you come across. Just because it's not glowing gold or purple, which of course are the higher quality tiers, it doesn't mean there's not something useful in there. This way, if you collect all these items and materials, you'll have full customization over whatever it is you want to upgrade. The next tip, make sure that you sell gems, non-unique weapons and armor, and any other items that you're not using to vendors around the map. They might seem important at first, but things like gems actually have no use for our character and are simply in the game so that you can sell them to merchants and make money. As for common weapons, armor, and other items, you have a choice whether to sell them or break them down for materials. And that'll highly depend on what you're going for and how many weapons you're trying to upgrade, but if at any point you need more money, you can always sell those non-unique weapons and armor and actually make a good amount of money back. Now on the flip side of that, when you see unique weapons and unique armor at certain merchants around the map, if you have the money to do it, I recommend that you buy these items, because even if you have no intention of using them, or you don't like the bonuses that they have, you can always break them down later on, as they'll give you higher quality upgrade materials that you can use to upgrade other weapons and armor that you might like more. So pretty much, even if you're not going to use them, I still think it's worth it to buy them, because you can always make more money by selling other items, but these unique weapons and armor are something you can use for a higher purpose. Alright, another thing you should do immediately is if you go into your settings and go over to user interface or the UI tab, if you come right here and stop on the loot shimmer option, it should be defaulted to on, and although there is a write-up to the right describing that the game could be more immersive if you turn it off, I personally find it really helpful to have this on, because there are a lot of places around the map where you can't see where the loot is, or it's hidden behind a secret door, or on a different level than you, and having this on might be the only reason that you stick around in that location to find it. Alright, and more importantly, if you come down here to the compass section, a majority of these options are all going to be defaulted to on. However, the option down here that says God Shrine Totem Pieces is going to be defaulted to off. And this is because you can actually purchase maps at merchants that gives you helpful tips on where to find these totem pieces. Now, of course, you could leave this off, and whether or not you buy the documents that would give you helpful tips on where to find them would be completely up to you. However, I will admit turning this on was super helpful and saved me so much time. It acts just like all the other map labels, where if you happen to be near the area where that is, it'll pop up on your map and tell you whether you have to go higher, lower, or if you're on the same level as it. And it'll act the same way on your map as it does for herbs and other lootable items. Alright, with those out of the way, we're going to move over to some of the helpful things that you can learn from your party camp. And a majority of the things that I was talking about earlier that I wish I knew on my first run through were things I neglected from the party camp. First thing you should worry about here is any time that you come across a totem piece, and of course making sure you already have the base, you should immediately come back to your party camp and activate it. Now later in the game when you're collecting pieces, but you already have a shrine totem complete from the previous region, sure, you don't have to go and activate that one immediately, because ideally you want to have all 6 of them when you're activating it. However, since we don't have any yet in Dawnshore, the second you pick one up, and again making sure you have the base already in place, you should immediately bring it back to your party camp and activate it. Because these totem pieces give you incredible abilities and bonuses that you otherwise wouldn't have, and they're super helpful in every region, but especially this early in the game. Next, make sure you upgrade your weapons often. On my first go around, I was really conservative about which weapons I was upgrading, and I ended up hoarding a bunch of upgrade materials that I wish I had used. So don't be afraid to upgrade any weapons that you're holding, especially this early on in the game, because further down the road, you can always break them down for other upgrade materials, and especially things like unique weapons and armor that you're not using, you can always break those down for Audra pieces, and then upgrade any of the other ones that you actually want to use. And playing off of that, early in the game, you should learn how to both craft and break down upgrade materials. When you're crafting these materials, you're essentially upgrading them to higher quality tiers that you can then use to upgrade weapons and armor. On the flip side, breaking them down is taking those higher quality upgrade materials and breaking them down to lower qualities so you can then use them to upgrade weapons that are on lower quality tiers. And this is important because later in the game, you may find out that you want to upgrade a weapon that you got early on, because maybe it has an ability that might be useful to you at that time, but because it might be on a lower quality tier than the region that you're in, you can then break down some of your upgrade materials that you currently have into a lower quality tier so you can upgrade that weapon, and then bring it up into the quality tier that you're currently at. The next thing to do at party camp is to make sure that you take advantage of companion conversations. These may not seem like important conversations, but whenever you see an exclamation point over one of your companions, you should always check out what they want to talk about, because every now and again, they're going to ask you what kind of training that you want to do, and you'll be able to gain attribute points for specific attribute types. So for example, whenever Kai asks to help train you, you'll be able to choose between adding attribute points to damage, constitution, or to both. The max amount of points you can get is 2, so you can either do 2 damage, 2 constitution, or 1 of each. Either way, these are really important because these effects are permanent, and this will go for some of the other companions throughout the game. So whenever you see that exclamation point, definitely make sure you have a conversation with them to see if they're going to help you out. Another thing to do with the party camp is walk over to this pot that's sitting on top of the fire, where Kai is pretty much always standing, and interact with it to cook recipes. You can then take any raw, spoiled, or some of the smaller bits of food and create a bunch of different consumables. You can prepare different types of dishes and food, mainly for health regeneration, as well as a bunch of different drinks, can provide temporary abilities that you can use for boss fights, quests, or any time that you'd like. Now, a lot of these dishes and drinks are able to be bought at certain merchants, but it's easier and definitely more financially sound to cook up these recipes here at your party camp with all the different ingredients that you've collected over time. Another place at the party camp that you should visit often is the enchanting station. You can take any unique weapons that already have special abilities, and then you can actually upgrade them, or in some cases alter them, to choose a bonus for this weapon that's better for your playstyle. Now of course it can't just be any bonus that you want, but it'll typically be related to the weapon itself. In almost all cases, whatever bonus that your weapon currently has, one of the options will be to upgrade it to just a slightly better version, while the other one will be entirely different from the 2 other options. But no matter what, you should still be visiting this station, because it's simply just another way to make your weapon even better. Alright, and the last thing you should be taking advantage of at party camp is using the exit to previous location option. I believe this is something they added in one of the updates, but what a great addition it was. So how this works is that wherever you are on the map, as long as you're able to fast travel, you can fast travel back to one of your party camps, and then when you're done there, instead of exiting at the location that your party camp is at, you can click on the option exit to previous location, and this will send you right back to where you were when you fast traveled to the party camp to begin with. This isn't anything major, but I still wanted to point out what a great addition this was, and it's definitely something you should be taking advantage of to get the most out of your time and effort. Alright, now we're going to move on to some useful abilities you should think about getting early in the game. Now there are a ton that I think belong being discussed here, however I decided to settle on 2, and that's because these are both non-combat abilities, or at the very least aren't exclusively combat abilities, and because you only need to be level 5 to get them. The first one is Shadowing Beyond. This ability allows you to become invisible until your essence runs out, or until your next combat action. The entire time this ability is active, your essence will be draining, but you can regenerate it with essence potions. So the only way you stop being invisible is if you run out of essence, or if you perform some sort of combat action. I almost never use this ability in combat, because unless you're just trying to save yourself from getting killed, there's really no right time to be using this in combat. However, I find it extremely useful early in the game, when using it specifically to sneak past enemies, or into enemy camps, to collect unique gear and items without having to fight anybody. Pretty much in any instance where a unique weapon, armor, or other gear can be collected at a location in which you don't have to take out an enemy to collect that gear, this ability is going to be useful for you. Especially this early in the game, in the first region, where you may not be powerful enough yet to take on certain enemies, instead of having to fight them or their entire camp, and then collect whatever unique gear is there afterwards, you can simply use this ability to sneak past all the enemies, pick up whatever unique gear you're there for, and take off without being noticed. I've used the Shadowing Beyond ability to collect at least 3 of the unique weapons in Dawnshore, and while I don't want to spoil anything, there's something much later in the game where this ability is seriously going to come in handy. So even if you don't care about getting it now, there's probably going to be a point in the game later on where it'll still be worth getting this ability, even if it's just for that one-time use. And remember, you can always reset your ability points by spending a little bit of coin, and then reapply them however you'd like. Alright, the next useful ability early in the game is the Scavenger ability. Now in my first run through of Avowed, I didn't use this ability at all, however I have to admit I was definitely missing out. It may not even be noticeable to you, but every time that you pick up an herb, which is probably happening pretty often, this ability allows you to occasionally receive an extra upgrade material. And more importantly, at rank 2, crafting upgrade materials will cost 25% less. This is the main reason I think this is an important ability to have, especially early in the game. You're not only going to be able to get extra upgrade materials when picking up herbs, but once you get it to that second rank, taking those upgrade materials and crafting them to higher qualities is going to cost 25% less. All in all, this means that everything that goes into upgrading is going to become a lot easier and a lot more accessible. To put it simply, more upgrade materials equals the opportunity to upgrade more weapons or to upgrade those same weapons faster. Regardless of where you are in the game, this is definitely a good ability to have, and as I mentioned before, if you feel like it's not doing enough for you, you can always reset your ability points and decide not to use it the next time around. But alright guys, these were all of my early game tips that I think you should do immediately in Avowed once you get to the first region of Dawnshore. We touched on a bunch of helpful things to look out for, some things you should buy and sell, some settings options to make things easier, a bunch of different things that you can learn and take advantage of at party camp, as well as some abilities that I think will come in handy early in the game. Now while I think this was a decently extensive list, I'm absolutely sure there are some things that I didn't hit on, and maybe some that you think are good tips for people early in the game. So please, if you can think of any, drop them in the comments, because the whole point of this video is to help people that are just starting out and maybe don't have the time to play around as much and be trying to figure things out as they go along. We want to make things easier for you and speed things up so you can not only beat the game, but that you enjoy the entire journey. But alright guys, that's all I got. Like I said, if you have anything else you can add, put it in the comments. But otherwise, as always, thanks for watching, take care, and I'll see you in the next one.